Does the Modi government have an actual plan which can see Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir once again becoming a part of the Indian state? Or is this just mere election rhetoric? Remember, nobody thought that Article 370 could be done away with either. It went in one stroke. When I spoke to the Home Minister, he said, it'll happen. We will find a way. Is there a way? Can there be a way? To talk about this, I'm joined on this broadcast by my colleague, our Strategic Affairs Editor, Gaurav Sawant. With us is Lieutenant General Tiny Dillon. He's been former General Officer commanding 15 Corps in Kashmir. We've got Sushant Sareen, one of our best-known strategic affairs experts. Colonel Ajay Shukla joins us, another really top military mind. We've got Dr. Kamar Chima from Pakistan, and we've got a Baluch activist, Ahmar Mustikhan, joining us. Gaurav, I want to come to you first. Is this possible? Because you have a fair sense of how the military operates. It's not just PoK and the people, and we saw that report about protests in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. There's also the Pakistan army to contend with. Is there a rational strategy with which we can make PoK a part of India?
So there is a multi-pronged strategy. But Rahul, if I may, at the height of the British Empire, did anyone think that India could become independent? We did become independent. As you rightly pointed out, did anyone think Article 370 could ever go? It went. Did anyone think that India could bomb Pakistan for terror, and that too not just across the LC, but bomb across the international border at Balakot without declaration of war? And yet India did. So when the people decide and you have strong leadership, change happens. And the External Affairs Minister was very clear when he said, Abhi to trailer dekha hai with 370, wait for part 2 of the series. And part 2 of the series actually will have the people of Jammu and Kashmir, PoK-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, rise against a pauper Pakistan. Remember, Pakistan requires $120 billion just to remain afloat in the next 5 years. Do they have that? They have no money. All their money, their economy is in tailspin, it's declining. All their money is being taken by the Pakistan army. Whatever is left is taken by Punjab province and other provinces. Do they have money for Gilgit, Baltistan and PoJK? Clearly not, Rahul. So gradually things will change.
So your hope is that the people of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir will rebel. That will make it difficult for a poor country to hold on to its territory, and that's potentially when India can step in. Sushant Sareen, does that sound like a rational plan? Because in all of this, there is the Pakistani army to contend with.
So, Rahul, one, I think the last 10 years should inform us never to second guess what this government is going to do, because they tend to pull surprises. So I don't know whether they have a plan, they don't have a plan, but purely studying the issue objectively, there are only 4 ways that you can get PoK back at this point in time. One is that you carry out a military campaign. We have General Dillon out here. He can probably expound on it much better. But then it's not going to be an easy war. It's going to be an extremely difficult war in a very difficult terrain. And of course, there is the nuclear factor. The second possibility is that there is a mass uprising in PoK. And the people are completely alienated and they want out and they want to reunite with India. But even in that event, given the kind of brutality that the Pakistan army is notorious for, we will ultimately have to fight a war, and then the same dynamic comes into play. The third possibility is that there is an economic and a political collapse, which cannot entirely be ruled out. It's a bit of a stretch at this point in time, but yes, it cannot be ruled out. And then things simply implode in a way that, you get in and pick up the pieces. But at that point of time, you'll have to consider whether picking up those pieces are even worth it or not, despite whatever else we might be saying. And the fourth option is what I call the Gulab Singh formula, that, given the kind of problems that the Pakistanis are in, throw a couple of $1 billion and probably take over this area. But again, like I said, it's a bit of a stretch. But by and large, I think the important thing is that unlike the past, when the conversation was one-sided and everybody, especially the Pakistanis, were only talking about the Indian state of Jammu and Kashmir, or now the Indian Union territory of Jammu and Kashmir, and there was really no conversation about PoK, I think that conversation has completely been turned on its head. The discourse is now entirely about that Jammu and Kashmir, the part which is with India, is already a settled issue, and the only outstanding issue now is PoK. this was always the official position. But, when negotiations used to happen at the track 2 level and at various other levels, everybody used to talk about the LOC as the border. I think that's gone out of the window. So the Pakistanis have lost yet another opportunity of having a maximalist approach and not getting into a negotiated settlement. And then whatever negotiations were being offered to them are no longer on the table.
General Dillon, on the one side is psyops, and this constant rhetoric about we'll take PoK really puts Pakistan on the defensive, and which is fantastic from a psychological operations perspective. But if the government of the day were to ask someone like you, can there be a rational military plan to reunite Pakistan-occupied Kashmir with the Indian state? Do you think it's possible?
Good evening, Rahul, and good evening to all the fellow panelists. When nations go to war, the whole nation goes to war. It's a full comprehensive national power of that nation which is applied against the adversary. Militaries merely fight on the borders, and militaries are only just one part of that comprehensive national power. There is an economic might of a nation which is applied, there is a diplomatic might of a nation which is applied, and most importantly, the political will of the nation which is applied. In addition to many other things where citizens contribute and all that. So it's not like my friend Sushant Sen was saying, different 4 options. Whenever such a large-scale thing takes place or a nation takes a decision, all these 4 plus many more are combined together to apply against the nation. And how many of you would have imagined that a new nation like Bangladesh can be formed out of Pakistan? That time, the Pakistan army was committing atrocities against the Bengalis. Today, Pakistan army and Rangers are committing atrocity against the Kashmiris in PoK. That time, Pakistan army was in tatters in East Pakistan. Today, Pakistan army is in tatters in the Pakistan. That time, Indian might was applied in conjunction with so many other things. The Indian military might I am talking about. So everything can happen. A political will is required and the comprehensive national power. Today, we are at the right stage. The 5th largest economy, the political will.
So you think it can be done? The substance of what you're saying is, you think this is a doable military campaign, it can be done?
I said that. I said military campaign is but one part of such an operation.
Sure, but the moment, say, the first tanks roll in, the first troops roll in, Qamar Chima and the others in Pakistan, when they speak, they'll say, have you forgotten we've got nuclear weapons, we'll use them.
Qamar Chima is a very good strategic analyst, and he knows exactly when the nuclear weapons can be used and in which terrain they can be used, against which type of wind direction they can be used. And he also knows the geography and the layout of the subcontinent as to which all direction the wind flows and which all direction, and where the terrains are open, where the terrains are not open, where the damage caused by the nuclear weapons is heavy, and what is the type of population on either side. So I don't want to go into this. Qamar Chima knows it well.
Okay, I want to go across to Colonel Shukla and see if he is largely in line with this style of thinking, or do you think it would be foolhardy to launch a military campaign to try and take back Pakistan-occupied Kashmir? Colonel Shukla.
I think that we have to always keep in mind that we have already fought a military campaign to draw the lines in Kashmir. In 1947, the Pakistanis sent in a bunch of raiders and mixed up with their army soldiers and so on. And for more than a year, the two sides fought each other in Kashmir. And by the end of the year 1948, a broad line had been drawn, which was the line that separated Pakistan-occupied Kashmir from the Indian sort of understanding of Kashmir. It was one of the great sort of coincidences that the line that was drawn in 1948 by virtue of a military campaign also happened to be the line that actually separated ethnic Kashmiris in the Uri, Baramulla sort of belt from the Kashmiri people who were actually Sudans and sort of tribes like that, who were left on the Pakistan side. So the line has been drawn. The line has been drawn by military action. The line has been drawn by the sort of separation of Sudans and Kashmiris from the ethnic Kashmiris. And now to get in and say that we will redraw the line again and we will make Kashmir, Pakistan-occupied Kashmir ours, would be actually inviting a two-front war. China would not hesitate to kick in such a conflict. I would urge great caution in discussing something
Okay,
like this.
before I go across to the guests outside of India, let me get Sushant Sareen to counter what Colonel Shukla is saying. The concern about a two-front war, the concern that the line of actual control might get activated and China will come to the defense of its all-weather friend.
So, I can tend to agree with what Ajay is saying, and my point is a simple one. When you talk about PoK, you're not just talking about PoJK, which is in a lot of ferment right now. You're also talking about PoGB. And PoGB is a problem which will certainly pull in China. So we have to be mindful of the fact that, as Ajay is suggesting, that we could be faced with a two-front situation. And if not a two-front situation, something that the Chinese might tend to open another front elsewhere. So that is one factor.
No, but surely you're not advocating that, because initially you said it is doable. Surely you don't want the Indian army to be at war with both the Pak army and the Chinese army.
No, 1 second. I said that if you plan and you want to have a war, you cannot get PoK without a war. It will be an extremely difficult terrain and you cannot ignore the nuclear factor. And then I was raising my finger to tell you that there is also a China factor to consider. So I was going to bring in the China factor and miss that out.
Okay,
so
let me put that question then to General Dhillon and see how he responds to this, because the reality is, especially given their economic interest now in Gilgit-Baltistan, the concern that if the Indian army were to go in, the Pak army, we're pretty certain we can deal with. If it's both the Pak army and the PLA, then that's a whole different ball game than we are suddenly confronted with.
Rahul, exactly the point I made. I said comprehensive national power, and I did say diplomatic powers in that. In 1971 war, when Bangladesh was being liberated, the USA 7th Fleet was kept at bay because of our diplomatic relationship with then Soviet Russia, Soviet Union. So diplomatic effort is going to play a major role in all these things, and diplomatic efforts will ensure, if and when we go for this operation, that we fight one front war.
How can you be so sure?
Comprehensive national power, which
so how can you be so sure? Because the US or any of our Western allies would not want you to go to war. They'd advise against opening fire and trying to move into PoK. So it's not as if they're encouraging you to go out and do this.
That is where diplomacy is different on the surface, and it is different when the interests are deep. And interest with India, like an economic power we are today, the interest run deep, which was seen
even if
well
hypothetically we are able to get...
Give me 30 seconds. After abrogation of Article 370, not a single all-weather allies of Pakistan stood by them. And we are aware of it. This is how diplomacy works, and it will work.
Even if hypothetically we are able to get our Western friends on our sides, that doesn't mean that China is beholden to them. China, if it sees its economic interests being threatened, its strategic interests being threatened, they'll step in to do what they think is right. And surely DC can't tell Beijing what to do. In any case, they have a very frosty and fraught relationship.
See, exactly I'm saying. Whenever we go to do this, whenever we finally take a decision, all these aspects would have been taken care and covered. It's not that you go to war without thinking of these aspects.
Okay, Gaurav is raising his finger. He wants to come in. Do you have a response on how to deal with China if it suddenly decides to open a two-front war?
China looks at its economic interest, and if China's economic interest is better served with India, China will abandon Pakistan. Pakistan is a vassal state of China. Pakistan has no...
but if they were looking at their economic interest, we wouldn't have the current situation that we have in Depsang and Nemchok.
The China-Pakistan economic corridor has collapsed. There is no way that China will be able to revive it, and nor would it want to sink in more money with the instability in Pakistan right now. And the situation will only become worse in Pakistan in the years ahead. That's point one. If China gets access, to warm waters elsewhere. In 71 also, Russia had 2 divisions of the Chinese border, so China did not do anything. So you do Samdam, Dam.
But right now our relationship with China is different, Gaurav.
Right now it's not very good, but China is also realizing it that it's, keeping a relationship with India which is not very good is not in Chinese long-term interest.
But we have seen no evidence of that.
So, gradually by and by, when this decision, not that this decision is happening just tomorrow, but that the entire conversation is not happening about what's happening in Jammu and Kashmir. The entire conversation is about Pakistan's illegal occupation.
Really well.
Pakistan's illegal occupation of Jammu and Kashmir, including Gilgit and Baltistan, they've changed the demographic profile of that place. You know, the Sharda Peeth is in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, so that is our territory. The demographic profile was changed by the Pakistanis when they brought in people from Khyber Pakhtunkhwa to remove the Shias from Gilgit-Baltistan and the Kashmiris. Only 5% Kashmiris today in Kashmir, and 95% are Pakistani Punjabi Muslimans there.
Ahmad Musti Khan is a Baluch activist. He's joining us on this broadcast. Ahmad Saab, welcome. How do you look at the protests inside Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, in Gilgit-Baltistan? Again, we're seeing multiple attacks on Chinese economic interests, and so many Indian ministers saying, at one time, we're not going to tell you how, but we will make PoK a part of India. What do you make of this? Is it possible?
Sir, in my view, I am Baluch, but I am also a son of Mother India. I am first a son of Mother India. And not only Kashmir, the entire Pakistan is actually India. We never believed in partition. It was this two-nation theory has already failed, as we saw in 1971. And I believe in one United States of India. I have matured from the idea of a separate Balochistan into one United States of India. That is possible if India has got brilliant minds. India has got a lot of, you see, all the powers are there in India, intellectual, scientific, cultural. India is a land of multiple religions, Hinduism, Buddhism, later on Islam also. This also now a part of India. So I'm not sure why some Indians would be focused on just on Kashmir. My thing is, whole of Pakistan is actually India.
Okay, that's an interesting point of view from Ahmad Musti Khan. I want to go across now to Dr. Kamar Chima, who's been listening intently to this conversation. You know, Amit Shah, Dr. Jaishankar, Rajnath Singh, our defense minister, these aren't political lightweights. Apart from everything else, they take their personal credibility very seriously, and they said, trust us, we will take PoK back. How do you, sitting in Pakistan, view these comments coming from three of the senior most ministers in the Modi government?
Well, I think these are very significant
statements
coming. These are very significant statements coming from the top leadership. But I am also astonished to know that the Bharatiya Janata Party is not fielding election candidates in Kashmir for the first time in 3 decades. That also astonishes me. At the same time, I'm also concerned that even if, hypothetically speaking, as you were talking about, even if India wants to have, as you was calling the Azad Kashmir, are you ready to have 6 million more Muslims? Because Prime Minister Modi is not happy with the Muslims in India. वो कह रहे हैं Congress resources देना चाहती है उन लोगों को जो बच्चे ज़्यादा पैदा करते हैं. So are you ready for that matter? So I think
I don't think he said that. When I asked the Home Minister this question, he said every person, regardless of identity, who is a part of PoJK is an Indian national.
Sir, I was hypothetically speaking, but what I'm saying is that are you ready for a conventional war? Are you ready for, I won't say a full-scale war. Are you ready for everything? So I think आप घर में खाली पुलाव बना के बैठ के ये 4-5 लोग बैठ के पका रहे हैं. आप एक फौजी अफसर से पूछते हैं क्या होगा, दूसरे स्ट्रेटेजिस्ट से पूछते हैं क्या होगा. खाली पुलाव अच्छा है. As far as the 4th June is coming, till that time you can do whatever you want to do. But after 4th June, nobody will talk. And if you want to,
can I just say I'm not sure of what you're saying, only because Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir is hardly an electoral issue in India. When they keep saying this, when they keep saying this, Colonel Shukla, you know Amit Shah, Rajnath Singh, Jaishankar, they are putting their personal credibility at stake. They've gone out and said it publicly. They could have been wishy-washy. They've said it very, very upfront. So it's not, and whether they say this or not, it's not going to turn the Indian election. Therefore, what do you make of the fact that in quick succession, 3 top ministers have made this exact same part? Colonel Shukla?
Could you repeat the question, please?
No, so my question is that Dr. Jaishankar, Amit Shah, Rajnath Singh are very serious political players. They are extremely concerned about their personal credibility and standing in the eyes of the Indian people. So 3 top ministers making the same statement. It's not as if this is being done with an eye on the 4th of June, because PoJK is hardly an issue in this Indian election. But if they're saying it, what do you make of the fact that they're virtually staking their personal credibility and reputation on the line by saying this? Because later they'll be asked, "Arey, aapne bola tha kuch kiya to hai hi nahi aapne."
Well, I would say that one reason clearly is that there are elections in progress in India, and the responsibility levels even amongst top leaders tend to drop when there's elections in the offing. The second reason I would think was that no personal prices will be paid by any of these 3 ministers as a consequence of what happens if India faces a 2-front war with China and Pakistan.
I don't agree. Their standing is at stake. Their government's standing is at stake. So the price is very personal.
I'm agreeing with you. The timing is at stake because the timing has to do with elections that are in progress. But there are far more sort of important issues, and that has been demonstrated by successive governments in India, who tend to, the minute there's Kashmir popping up and Muslim majority popping up in Pakistan, the ministers and politicians on the Indian side tend to start trying to exploit it for political purposes.
Let Sushant Sarin come in. Do you see this linked to the 4th of June, which is what Colonel Shukla and Kamarchima are suggesting? Or do you think that in the way that because when I interviewed the Home Minister and he said this, and that's also an interview I did with the Defense Minister, they're virtually staking their personal credibility, because 5 years, 10 years later, if nothing happens, all of us will turn around and say, "Arey, badi baatein kar rahe the, kuch kiya to hai nahi." You're building expectations. It's not an expectation people necessarily have. You're building expectations, like we'll remove 317, then you'll be held accountable to it.
Rahul, a couple of things. The one, please remember, this is not part of the manifesto.
Correct.
So it's not as though they have said that in the next 5 years, we are going to be taking over PoK. That does not mean that they are not committed to the idea that the entire state of Jammu and Kashmir is an integral part of India, and that the only thing that now remains to be settled is the PoK area, which is both PoJK and PoGB. So I think it's important not to conflate these issues. Thirdly, please remember that if a question like this is put to a political leader, especially at the time when he's at the hustings, he's not going to say, "No, I'm not bothered about PoJK," right? He's not going to say, I'm not going to go in for PoK. He will double down on the election rhetoric. So as to that does not mean that he's not committed to it, but I think he will reiterate it. And finally, I think everybody in the government also understands that yes, India is likely to be the 4th largest economy within this particular year because of what's happening in Japan. And do you want to put everything at stake for getting PoK back at this point in time? Maybe 5 years, 10 years, 15 years from now. Certainly, why not? But at this point in time, when you are on the verge of an economic takeoff, would you want to put everything at stake, fight a war? And please remember, as we've seen in the Russia-Ukraine case, wars are notoriously uncertain. So I think we need to be very careful about what we are wishing for. And as Oscar Wilde said, that what's worse than not getting what you wish for is to sometimes get it.
Be careful what you wish for, General Dhillon, because Russia-Ukraine, he cites as an example, the war starts, it doesn't end, so it's not a quick surgical strike in and out the next day. This could be long, brutal, bloody, bruising, and therefore, do we really want it?
We have to be very clear when the nation takes a decision and the political will is there, I said earlier. In 1971, a lot of people were talking about USA supporting Pakistan. And a decision was made, a diplomatic effort was put in place, and we all know the result. Similarly, the naysayers will say, even today, China is there, this is there, that is there. When the governments, when the political parties, when the people in the chair, they take a decision, they consider all these things, they take all the informed inputs. And then the timing is of own choosing. Like Mr. Shansreen was saying, timing is of your choosing. The economy of Pakistan is in doldrums, internal situation is in doldrums, political standing of Pakistan is in doldrums, Pakistan's diplomacy is in doldrums. So timing is the decision of our political outfit.
No, but is it worth it? Whatever timing you pick, Gaurav, the question is, let's imagine we go out and accomplish this mission and suddenly PoJK is ours. The question that was being asked by Sushant is it worth what we get at the end of it?
Absolutely.
Why?
Because it opens that entire route to Central Asia by road. What you're doing via Chabahar, you have that entire access. You strengthen your defenses. That area is strategically extremely important for India. And as of now, I'm not even talking about the spiritual significance or the civilizational significance of that place. Strategically, that area is of immense importance. And Gilgit and Baltistan being a part of India is actually a crown. That's the crown of Jammu and Kashmir. A collapsing Pakistan, because Qamar Chima will go ahead with the bluff and bluster, but can Qamar Chima answer when Article 370 was made inoperative? What could Pakistan do? Absolutely nothing. Whenever India takes
they made a lot of noise.
That is all. They ek tang pe khade ho jayenge. Imran Khan, the next Imran Khan, and look how he's looking today. The next Pakistan leader will also be standing on one foot. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto was saying, I'll fight a 1,000-year war. He was hanged in a couple of years. So, Pakistanis talk too much. They can do precious little, and a pauper country anyway can do nothing.
Qamar Chima.
You can do whatever at home. You can get it stamped from the Supreme Court. But the point is the word still calling it a disputed territory? Yes, the word is
dispute is Pakistan-occupied Jammu Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan, sir.
You are good at home in making khayali pulao bada acha banate ho, but the question is, in the real hard world, the world doesn't accept. Okay, you have changed it, you have got it stamped from the Supreme Court, but I think this is not, the things
I hope you saw the polling numbers from Srinagar, polling higher than it's been in decades. And
their Abba, Saudi Arabia and UAE, their Abu Jan has all invested in Jammu and Kashmir. What does he say, that there is no international acceptance?
I don't know if the Indian army will go to war or not. Gaurav, Sawant has declared war. His missiles are firing.
It's all rhetoric that comes. UAE is investing money in J&K. There's no money in Pakistan.
गुस्से वाली बातें कर रहे हैं, ऐसे नहीं होगा भाई, आपकी फौज से नहीं हो पाएगा, सियासतदान मरवाएंगे आपको, बचे फौजियों को मैं
सर आपकी फौज से नहीं हो पाएगा is exactly what General A.A.K. Niazi said before 1971. 13 days later he surrendered and 93,000 Pakistanis were eating Indian rations. So let's not go for Pakistani bluff and bluster. We actually let the Pakistanis punch far above their weight.
Send your forces. We are waiting for your forces. Send them, please.
Sir, you're only waiting for dole. आपको तो कोई 4 रुपए दे दे, आप पाकिस्तान occupied Kashmir दे देंगे उनको फोकट में. All you need is money for your next meal.
A country wants to invade other country. Does it talk in a TV studio, or do they talk in the DG military will be talking on that? I think you are completely out of order. I understand the problem of the media in India. Don't buy everything which the BJP gives you. Yes, you are in a difficulty. You have a problem in India. The media is completely collapsed. That's why you are called Goti media.
If I may, Rahul, खाने को दाना नहीं है पाकिस्तान के पास, इंडिया पे comment करते हैं. Who are these people is what I want to understand. They live off foreign
Okay,
dole.
Sushant has his hand up. Sushant, very quickly, I'm also running out of time. And with all this pulao and biryani, I'm also thinking, bhai, kuch khana ho jaye. Yes.
Because they don't get to eat all of this anymore.
Sushant, quick final comments.
Well, I think Gaurav is on the mark. There's a lot of bluff and bluster which comes from the Pakistani side. And I think what General Dillon hits the nail on the head. This is a decision that will be taken by India, not, very, in a very cavalier manner. It will be taken with due deliberation. It will be, we fought the 1971 war after ensuring that we had already won it before we fired the first bullet. So I think, let's wait. I think we need to be patient. We don't give up on our claims. We have already changed the discourse on Jammu and Kashmir, that now the only issue to be settled is PoK. I agree with Gaurav that yes, there are only 2 strategically important areas in Pakistan. One is Balochistan and the other is Gilgit-Baltistan. Otherwise, the whole of Pakistan is irrelevant, right? Balochistan is fighting its own struggle for freedom. And if Gilgit-Baltistan, along with PoJK, can be given its independence and its unity with India, I'm all for it. The question is that it has to be done at a time and place of our choosing, with all the necessary preparations, not just diplomatic, but ensuring that when you fire the first bullet, yes, there will be some minor setbacks when you go forward, but you should not get in under some starry-eyed notion, you should not be drinking your own Kool-Aid. You should go in a very cold, deliberate manner and make sure that when you've gone in, you've achieved your objective before the war ends.
India's national...
And it cannot be a long drawn-out one.
India's national security advisor, Ajit Doval, has a strategy he calls defensive offense. That is at full play over here. Regardless of when, where and how we launch a military campaign against the Pak army to recover PoK, the Pakistani
Rahul,
state...
may I say one thing?
Yes, sir. I'm out of time, so jaldi bataiye.
Yeah, you see, we must not forget that it was a white general who launched the Operation Gulmarg. When Kashmir was taken, it was a white general. It is not in the interest of Pakistan or India to go to war.
Okay. True. As I
was
said,
the British Army that gave Gilgit-Baltistan to Pakistan.
Defensive offense. So you've
offensive defense. You're absolutely
unsettled the Pakistani state. They're wondering, oh, ye aa na jaye. They did away with 370, and it kind of puts the Pakistanis on the back foot. And I think that is really the critical aspect of defensive offense, which is very clearly at play over here.